chat. Hello, good morning. Apologies if the either the service goes down or you get cut off temporarily by a phone call because I'm operating on my handset. If you are cut off for a moment, I will get back to you almost immediately. So so do not sweat and do not fret. I will get there. But how are we all? Good morning, morning everyone. Morning coffee moaning. Well, it's not coffee moaning. We're doing a Gaza update basically. We're gonna be doing a sort of focus on what's going on in Gaza. There's been big news this morning, and there's all sorts of shifts and gyrations going on. So I thought it would be good to touch base with you guys. I see lots of our regulars here, sending love to everyone, sending happy birthdays to various people. Nanny Di, as you can see, she isn't currently home yet, but she will be for those who follow the channel. But for those who don't, and for those who are kind of wanting an update on the situation in Gaza, that's why I'm here. Now, I'm not on StreamYard, so I'm not playing in clips. I'm just going to be talking and imparting information. Nanny Di is my mother, which is why I'm in this new location. We're just making it amenable for her, and she's stable, and I'm seeing her later today, and we're going to be finding out how she is. So and hopefully she'll be home soon. So thank you for all of your messages over the weekend. Very kind, obviously. Quite rightly so, you know, lots of content has sort of taken a back seat. But that said, I'm here now and I'm waiting. So I thought, well, let's do a live, let's do a catch up. But as I say, if a call comes in, if I'm interrupted, do stay on the live. I will get back to you because I'll be getting back to you straight away. So in terms of the news this morning, guys, the news this morning. There's quite a few bits and bobs. There's the most acute news is 5 people having been killed in East Jerusalem by Palestinian resistance fighters. And insofar as obviously 5 people have been killed, this is bad news. You don't want any, you know, we've said all the way through this crisis, any innocent casualties are horrendous and to be called out and to be criticized and to be condemned. But that really does mean all civilian casualties, all innocent casualties. And so whilst it's awful what's happened today, it's, you know, it's comparatively still very, very little compared to what no one has got outraged about in relationship to the sheer scale of civilian casualties in the, let's not beat around the bush, ongoing genocide that nearly every genocide scholar and expert on the planet has defined Israel's occupation and attack and assault on Gaza as. So this morning, just in terms of the news, let me just sort of read to you this. This is the story that happened this morning. 5 people have been killed in Jerusalem in a shooting attack. Paramedics said at least 5 people were shot dead. The Israeli emergency services said 4 people died at the scene, and 1 person died in hospital. 9 people with gunshot wounds were taken to hospitals to receive treatment, along with 3 others injured by broken glass, the emergency services said. Now, this is an attack. This is Hamas and other organizations in Gaza have applauded this attack. And as we say, we don't want to be applauding any innocent civilian casualties. We don't want any casualties at all. But Hamas are describing this as an act of resistance against the ongoing genocide. Needless to say, my thoughts on this are, well, also an hour ago, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was holding an assessment with the heads of the security establishment after the deadly attack in Jerusalem this morning. Now, my concern about all of these things, you know, is that on the one hand, this is absolutely awful, but on the other, and I'll say it again, and it's not about being, what's the word? Unsympathetic or brutal, but it's incomparable in severity to what we know has happened in Gaza and what we know is continuing to happen in the West Bank. Jacqueline, thank you, Rachel. It's a drop in the ocean. Now, that's not to minimize the loss of life, not at all. But I would argue that the Israeli government, the IDF, Israeli settlers, the Western media, made, the majority of the Western media, and the majority of Western governments do not give the same focus or attention to the tens of thousands of deaths that have occurred at the hands of the Israelis. So here's my thoughts on this. I don't know if anyone else agrees. I'm not suggesting it didn't happen the way that it happened. It's happened. Who thinks this could end up being the catalyst for Israel to potentially be more aggressive in terms of annexing the rest of Jerusalem? Or even, because the suggestion is already that these two shooters, the two Palestinian shooters, originated from the West Bank. So who thinks, because there's this curious moment, isn't there, where when I read the story, I thought, oh, Christ, the last thing you should be doing when you're looking for a ceasefire and you're wanting Israel to pull out of Gaza is attack. But then we are holding one side in this conflict to a much higher standard of restraint than Israel has ever shown. Do you get what I mean? It's like, the point I'm trying to make is like, I had a first response of head in hands, kind of, this is going to be like a red rag to a bull to Netanyahu and all of his kind of far right, government ministers. It's going to be a red rag to a bull. And yet, what we see in this conflict is an absolute inability and a legal, the legal loopholes that they're not being allowed to be any kind of fight back or killing or retaliation from the Gaza, from Palestinians in Gaza, or from Palestinians in the West Bank. We've said it many times. If you throw a rock, if you try to defend your home. I mean, how many of us have seen footage of the settlers, pushing into properties, onto land, abusing and hitting and smacking much older men who, just in terms of sheer generational ages, they should respect their elders, even if they're Palestinian. And you can see that the Palestinians do not and cannot respond, because if they did, or if they do, they know that they'll be punished by the IDF, they'll be imprisoned, and they'll be added to the over 10,000 Palestinian hostages that the Israeli government's got. And we have to talk in these terms. I think one of these, Dolores, we're not talking about that. One of the most important aspects of this conflict is the language that we use to talk about these things. And when we use the language of, a moral army, a justified targeting, a rational killing, it's like everything Israel does is civilized and rational, and anything else that anyone else reacts with is automatically defined as terrorism. And I think we have to avoid that. So this, I haven't gone so far as to say that this is a false flag, because actually, and a false flag is when a moment of violence or a bomb or an attack or something happens and it's actually been structured to be used as a reason for one side to do something even worse. Now, the reason I'm not saying that is because at this point we don't know the full story, and there are innocents that are potentially that are involved in this shooting. And until there is more information, though of course that information is only going to come from the Israeli government, I don't think it's right or morally correct to just call it something when one doesn't know that for certain. But I do have a concern that this Jerusalem shooting could absolutely be used as a trigger or as a catalyst, whether it happened for real or whether it's been in any way manufactured or allowed to happen, could then be used as a catalyst for further restrictions and occupations on the West Bank. Who thinks there could be a bit of that at work? Now, I mean, a lot of people and a lot of reports and a lot of testimonies by IDF soldiers around October the 7th suggest that they themselves, sorry, let me just deal with this. A lot of them would they themselves, a lot of people have said themselves that actually Many of the IDF soldiers, much of the army was sort of held back on October the 7th. There's some question marks. There are a lot of questions, which is other Israeli government, other Israeli politicians and other kind of commentators in Israel want to challenge Netanyahu on how October the 7th could have been allowed to happen. Let me just throw this thought out there, and I'm not suggesting either way what we know or whether we know anything different. It strikes me as patently absurd that a military and an intelligence service that's one of the sharpest and most sort of expensive and efficient in the world around October the 7th. And do you remember us talking around the time of October the 7th? Egypt gave them notification that an attack was going to happen. It seems odd that they were so slow in dealing with it when they are not only so fast in taking people out around the world, but they actually managed to target people in their beds and only take them out in a bed. So the idea that people coming in on paragliders and I think on a digger, and I think a couple of them might have come in on donkeys, and that somehow that overwhelmed the incredibly sophisticated Israeli army, it's challenging to buy it in that sense. Now, that's not to say that the deaths didn't happen, but once again, the nature of the deaths and the exact nature of what happened on that day has been shrouded in all sorts of kind of propagandized kind of mystery. It was simpler than that, says Michu. Netanyahu was given a heads up of imminent attack by other countries, and he chose to ignore it because he saw the opportunity to use it as a retaliatory excuse. Well, let me just read to you. I just want to read to you what the leading opposition politician in Israel has said. Let me just find. 5 people killed. Yair Golan, leader of the opposition Democrats Party in Israel, has called today for Benjamin Netanyahu to leave office immediately. And this speaks to what you're saying, Michu. I mean, one has to be careful how one says these things. It's all right for you to say it, Michu, but we've got to be careful. I don't think he ignored it as Trudy Akin. I think he worked with it. This is what Yair Golan, the leader of the opposition party, Democrats Party, has said. The Prime Minister, Netanyahu, who called Hamas an asset, speaks to what you're saying, Michu, is a serial saboteur of every deal to return the hostages. He rejects every initiative to end the fighting and to lift the country out of the state of emergency, and on the Gaza envelope and the security of its citizens. There is no security strategy here whatsoever. The war to annex Gaza is designed to preserve Netanyahu's rule and allow him to complete the regime coup under its cover, so i.e. take control. Netanyahu is dangerous to Israel and must not remain in power for even one more day. This is big language. We will replace him, save our kidnapped brothers, end the war, and restore security to Israel. As you know, Netanyahu is on trial for corruption. And here's the thing, I think the only set of circumstances in which this conflict or the Gaza genocide will stop, potentially stop, is if Netanyahu felt he had a guarantee that he wouldn't be prosecuted. Sorry, I told you it was going to go. Just 1 second. I'm coming back. How's that? Is that any better? I'm back on. I'm on 4G. Let me know if that works any better. I've gone deaf, says MeTube. Yeah, back, better. Yes, good. Sorry about that. So this is big language coming from Yair Golan. This is big words coming from the opposition party in Israel. So this is the news this morning for those just joining. Five have been shot dead. This is in East Jerusalem. It was at a kind of crossing point where Palestinians can cross over into both sides of Jerusalem. They've closed those crossings. I want to just update here. Hang on, I'm just going over to Middle East Eye. Hamas have said that they commend the heroic operation carried out by 2 Palestinian resistance fighters at the Ramot settlement junction. So that would suggest, the reason that's important and significant to mention, that would suggest if Hamas had taken responsibility for it, that this is not a false flag situation. But it is a potential moment where, you know, the suggestion that a ceasefire could be imminent, I think that's going to go out the window. I don't see, given the history, that Netanyahu today is going to go, yeah, let's have a ceasefire today, off the back of there being this attack or this moment. So, and in other news, Trump at the same time has also issued a last warning to Hamas to accept the Gaza ceasefire deal. Yesterday on Sunday, he called. Let me just read his. I can just read his Truth Social post. It's always interesting to hear from the big man himself. Hi, Trudy. Everyone wants the hostages home. Everyone wants this war to end. The Israelis have accepted my terms. It's time for Hamas to accept as well. I've warned Hamas about the consequences of not accepting. This is my last warning. There will not be another one. Thank you for your attention to this matter, Donald J. Trump. Now, you know, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Why would Hamas, if they were agreeing to a ceasefire or wanting a ceasefire, why would they claim ownership and celebrate a shooting like this? It's frustrating, isn't it? It's frustrating. And it's just interesting, isn't it, to hear once again Yair Golan, the leading opposition to Netanyahu, reminding us that Netanyahu describes Hamas, or has described Hamas, as an asset. An asset. And I think it's really important to just keep that thought in your mind, because actually, you know, over the years, historically, Benjamin Netanyahu has been directly responsible for funding, fueling, and supporting Hamas. And sometimes it's kind of, because we're constantly dealing or firefighting, quite literally, the next crisis or the next international war crime or the next kind of atrocity. It's sometimes we forget to remind ourselves of the history of how we got here. And that's part of the strategy of Israel. It's part of the strategy of America. We don't want people kind of asking questions about how we got here. We want everyone to know that where we're at right now is bad. And so when a moment like this shooting happens, you can rest assured that all of the Israeli supporting media is simply just going to talk about how awful this moment is. And of course, this moment is awful. Anyone dying is awful. But relative, and I just want to keep saying it again, relative to everything else that's gone on, it is absolutely a drop in the ocean. And it speaks to everything and anything that the Western media and Western governments haven't said about everything else that happens. So, for example, if Keir Starmer and David Lammy today, or it's not David Lammy anymore, was it Yvette Cooper, condemn this, which, fine, okay, they can condemn this attack, why did they have nothing to say about the double tap strike on the hospital, on NASA Hospital, that killed all those journalists? You can't, you know, and that will be the telltale sign, once again, of how it's one set of rules for one and a totally racist set of other rules for the other side too. So Trump issues a warning. He says and claims that Israel have accepted his ceasefire deal. And the problem with any of this, whenever, you know, whether it's Trump or Biden or the media or anyone says Israel has accepted the ceasefire deal, we haven't seen Netanyahu actually go online on his socials and say, I've agreed to the ceasefire deal. What we've had instead this morning is this. We've had Israel Katz, that guy who loves Israel so much he's named it twice. Let's have a listen. Israel's defense minister this morning says Gaza City will be hit by a powerful hurricane later today. So on the one hand, Hamas supporting this attack doesn't speak to them having agreed to any ceasefire. And Israel's defense minister saying a hurricane is going to hit Gaza City doesn't really speak to Israel having agreed to Trump's ceasefire deal either. So someone's playing fast and loose with the facts there. And we've seen it happen before, where America pretends to the world that Israel has agreed and that actually Hamas are the ones that are obstructing it. And even though Hamas have kind of complimented, if you like, these resistance fighters, as they call them, that have done this shooting, the whole thing, does anyone else smell a rat? I smell a distinct rat in the whole thing. Anyway, Israel's defense minister has said this, Israel Katz, so loves the country he's named himself twice. He's warned that a powerful hurricane will strike the skies of Gaza City. They love these analogies, don't they? You know, they've called it Gideon's Chariots 2 or something, haven't they? The sequel. Today, a powerful hurricane will strike the skies of Gaza City and the roofs of the terror towers will fall. This is a final warning to the murderers and rapists of Hamas in Gaza and in luxury hotels abroad. Release the hostages and lay down your weapons or Gaza will be destroyed and you will be annihilated. Now, call me moronic, but wasn't it like 2 or 3 weeks ago Hamas had agreed to everything? They'd agreed to Donald Trump's original deal. So this is where the rat is. So hang on. The media, America and Israel, ignored all the news that the Middle Eastern media was reporting that Hamas had said, okay, here's the deal. They just didn't want to hear that because they wanted to go into Gaza. Today, America is now saying there's a deal on the table. It doesn't make any sense because Israel doesn't want a ceasefire. It doesn't want a ceasefire. Penny Albertella says there is a very smelly rat in the room. There really is, isn't there? I think it's Ben Gvir. MeTube, yes, Hamas agreed to original ceasefire terms, release hostages over 2 stages. Netanyahu wants all released in one go. So if Donald Trump has said Israel have agreed to the ceasefire, MeTube, I can't help but feel that this shooting is going to be all about not having to agree. You know, maybe both sides don't want to agree to the ceasefire, and this shooting serves both sides. Oh, bear with me 1 sec. Hello? I'm going to be back in a while. I'm going to go live again in a minute. 1 sec.